last session of the day, so I understand, I'm aware of the fact that you're all tired. We have had a very busy day, and we will try to make the session enjoyable for you. So we have distinguished speakers, and Professor Christina Ullenis. She is a board member of Evora. I would like to invite you to the stage, to the floor, please. And Professor Ursula Nelles, who is also a board member of Evora. And Professor Martine Rahier. She is the Vice President of European University Association. Last but not least, we have a young fellow, Malin Johansson. She is representing European Women Scientists Platform here. Before we start our session, we would like to show you a short video. What is Evora? Who are we? What are we trying to do? What are our aims and goals? So let's see the film. It's a 2-minute film. I don't think so. So let's see. No, it's okay.
Women still remain a minority at all levels of power and decision-making in many countries across the world. Academic decision-making is also one of the areas where gender inequalities are very much widespread and visible. The European Commission is committed to foster gender equality as core policy in all its instruments, and one of the objectives of Horizon 2020 is ensuring gender balance in decision-making. In this framework, it's very timely and meaningful to introduce the European Women Rectors Association, Evora. That is the fully fledged international non-profit association to promote the role of women in leadership positions in academia. Evora is the continuation of the European Women Rectors Platform, which has organised 4 conferences entitled Beyond the Glass Ceiling, Women Rectors Across Europe since 2008. The founding board members of Evora are Carmen Fennell, Kristin Ingolfsdottir, Helena Nazare, Ursula Nelles, Gülsün Sağlamer, President, Christina Ullenis, and Krista Varantola. Evora aims to develop strategies and policies to encourage women academics for leadership positions, establish a new Europe-wide network to transfer and spread knowledge and experience, ensure a balanced participation of women and men in academic leadership, observe, evaluate and analyse the gender differences in academia at European and international levels. Evora is committed to address gender-based structural inequality with regard to academic leadership, and we invite you to join us by raising awareness, providing opportunities, encouraging and empowering women academics and researchers for leadership positions.
Okay, thank you. As we have very limited time, we thought that it would be good to have 5 minutes from each speakers, and then let the floor ask questions, because we are experienced women leaders in our universities. So maybe instead of giving you, some known facts during our presentation, it's better to share our experiences and some of the interesting stories that we have had during our leadership periods. So I would like to invite Ursula first to give her speech. So,
thank you so much. Dear colleagues, to be honest, I think everybody here in this room is what we call a geek feminist. For those who don't know what it is a kind of a luxury feminism, and STEM and gender equality in STEM is a prominent example to explain what this means. It's the luxury problem that we just look at women in academic careers those who aim at an academic career or those who have already been on their way. So this is not the whole range of social inequality or unequal opportunities which we deal with. And we face two problems, especially in STEM, but also in other studies. The first problem is less who decide to study STEM rather than, for instance, humanities, philology, fine arts, nursery, and so on, the so-called vertical segregation. The second problem comes at the end of the career. How is it defined? And what is the end? And if we compare those who enter in STEM studies with the number of those who come out, there is kind of a gap, which is either defined as the so-called glass ceiling, or more common today is the leaky pipeline. The metaphor of the leaky pipeline is criticized and has been criticized. The first critical idea is it is absolutely useless to measures, to take action at the end of the career, at the end of the pipeline, unless you don't patch the holes at the very beginning. And thus we have two things. One is it's just an excuse not to do anything at the end, which is not a very good idea. And the other is that we all have become used to the idea that we have to take action to support young women, to support the youngest, even young girls, but we forget about the rest. This is wonderful, of course, and there are a lot of examples. I think looking at the program of this conference, an additional example for all these measures for young and youngest girls and women will not cause additional persuasion. Everybody here has made the same experience. So instead, I will go to the end of the pipeline. First of all, being a professor, and even being a woman professor in STEM, is not necessarily the end of the aim of an academic career. What about being a rector? What about being a president? What about being, for instance, the Minister of Science and Research on states level, on federal level, and so on? Why must it be the end of the career? Second one, what about those women who flew out of the leaky pipeline? They didn't disappear. They still exist. And it is not necessarily a drop out, but probably a very deliberate decision to work in industry, to work in politics, to work in NGOs, or let's say the management of a university. And this must not be the end of the career neither. There are jobs within the board, within leading a university, which are very attractive and apted for those women, so that the question is arousing the second critics against the metaphor of the leaky pipeline. Can't we regain them? Can't we bring them in again into the pipeline so that they can promote up to highest options? I think this is, you've seen it in this short video, within the mission of Evora, we should try to empower women or to draw their attention on attractive leadership positions, and we should try to regain those who flew out or decided to take other positions meanwhile. Why is it important to have women in leadership? First of all, women in leadership can support women very effectively and mostly do so. Second, their mere existence, their visibility and their performance as role models in higher education and is of valuable importance for the next generation, and you may say they guarantee the sustainability of the development. And I want to give you a few examples. I am a lawyer. I didn't study sociology. I didn't study gender studies, but I always said that as a lawyer, it was the greatest and hugest social experiment of my life to be a rector of a university with around 45,000 students and 70,000 members of the staff in this for time of 10 years. I'll give you 3 examples. The first one is I established the women professors meeting, very unofficially. We met every semester, started at about 6 o'clock in the evening and ended around 8 o'clock in the morning. Wonderful nights. The whole university talked about that, and they thought after a while that we are the most informed group within the university on the level through all faculties and all schools and departments. This gave us a lot of power as a group, and every single professor too. The second example is that I had a quotated board during all the 10 years. I never announced that. It happened just by magic. The formal reason behind this is very simple. The only one to propose the vice presidents is the elected rector. I could propose how many of them I would like to have and the names. And as I looked for quality, it was absolutely self-evident that half of the members of the board were women. And this stayed so during the 10 years. And just to point out what it meant to some students who never knew that university, just as a university led by a woman. So the representative of the international students' representation went to the students' representation board and said, a catastrophe is happening. She will leave, she will retire. Did you ask? And then he brought 3 or 4 names of women, if they are willing to become a rector. And he was an Arab, male, Muslim student. And the other said, well, there will be a committee and they'll find someone. And he said, no, you must take a woman. Men can't do that job. And the third example, on the level just below the board of the university, we had 6 officers in line for staff, for finances, for facility management, and so on. And when I started, we had 6 lines, 5 men, 1 woman. When I left, 4 women, 2 men. And this just by a very, very objective assessment centers without any biases, and it works. I will see what happens. My successor now didn't dare to present to the community of the university a non-quotated board, so he has 3 women, 3 men as well. But I hope that the sustainability which we all are looking for will show some more years the same results. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ursula. Now I would like to invite Christina Ullenis to the floor. She's coming from Sweden, and as you know, 60% of the rectors are female in Sweden. So it's a great pleasure to have this information, you know.
Thank you, Gülsün. hate having to handle the microphone while I'm thinking, but I'll try to combine that. Well, now Ursula gave you some kind of philosophical overview, I think, about recent developments in feminism, and also her own experience. I'll definitely build on my own experience, but then I think I'm not going to talk about my own university, what I was doing there, because they were very similar things. I'm a chemical engineer by education, but I've been the president or the rector of a broad university, a new university as well. And for a long period of time, I was working on the national level as the president of the National Rectors Conference, and that's really where that experience I'm going to use. And I left my glass behind, I think. Yes, I did. It's sorry, Gülsün. Really sorry.
So.
I hope that's going to improve things. I think it's bullshit to say that you can't work on the final stage of careers, but instead work on the earlier stages. You have to work on all levels. And I think as a rector, your responsibility is to look at the final stages. You can't start meddling in daycare or kindergartens. So what I've been doing, I've been working on programs where we have been trying to promote women to become rectors or presidents of universities. And I've also worked on programs where we have identified young female scientists, putting them into programs where they are supported to become professors. Both these types of programs have been extremely successful, I would say, and I'm now hoping they will be sustainable because it's been only over the last 15 years. I think in a way one has to discuss, is it okay to start programs for women only? There are lots of opposition on that, of course. In Sweden, I think we consider ourselves being very much gender aware. We have achieved high equality, but of course there's always lots and lots to be done. There is gender bias, no doubt, throughout the systems, in society, in academia. We have to move on and tackle that. But I'd like to relate a little bit about the programs I've been working on. Because I think what we have seen is that women are not given enough time for research. I think we had that also from Felicia. They don't have the networks that men have. There are so many things that women have a little bit less of than men. The support of male colleagues, for example. So in the early 2000s, around 2002, we decided, when I was the president of the Rectors Conference, we have to do something about increasing the number of women rectors. And so we started a program that was very much inspired by an American program called IDAS, Identify, Develop, Advance, Support. And what's important about it, it's not only directed towards women, it's very much directed to their home institution. We recruited women from all the Swedish universities. There are not many, 30, 35. But the recruitment went through the rectors. They had to identify potential female leaders who might become deans or rectors. So that's a first step, realizing there are potential leaders among the women scientists and considering how they could promote them. The other thing was then to have programs for the women. So it was a combination, structural change in the university and support development programs for the women. And so the rectors had to go back to their universities to look at promotion. What are the procedures? What are the values? Are the procedures transparent? There are lots of things you have to think about. Is your language gender biased? And so on and so forth. So hopefully a slow but still a cultural change. For the women so now we have identified women, that's the I. We have now to develop them, that's the D. which meant we had a 3 to 5 year program, and most of the women stayed in the program. They came maximum 2 from each institution, and they were giving programs in leadership, media training, understanding the legal structures of universities, how the government works in research fields and so on and so forth. They were given mentors if wanted, and I think women as mentors for women have a special quality, contrary to male mentors, which contribute something else. So I think in this program there are so many similarities from what we heard from Felicia previously. So there were lots of networking, a very important part of it, of course, having women from all the universities. And I think looking back now, we started, say, 2002. There were a few women rectors. And in 2010, I think we had 50%. So now it's half and half. And it's very, very much based on this program. And it's definitely building strength in women to acknowledge that, yes, I want to take on leadership, and not hiding that. Well, anyway, so far we have 50%, but many of the universities are in the process of shifts. So I'm just hoping there is a sustainable level of women participation. But I was talking to the Minister of Research the other day, telling her that you probably have to start another program like this. Now, hoping she would take it over. So that's about leadership for universities. But can I take 2 more minutes? Yeah, okay. Because then I'd also like to address the leaking pipeline in the academic career. I was chairing a program which is very much based on the similar idea of the identify, develop, advance, and support, but now looking at women who are in their scientific careers, aiming to become professors and hoping to become professors. And fortunately, one of the big research funding agencies in Sweden thought maybe it's worthwhile addressing women. But of course, legally we can't address women. We have to say we are addressing the underrepresented sex, otherwise the European system will be very upset. So we developed a program for the underrepresented sex. Again, identifying women who are potential professors, supporting them from the university. They were given funding for spending 1 year abroad, really concentrating on research, creating their own networks, independent of their supervisor or male colleagues at home. They were giving enough funding to bring husband and children, to put the children in school, which was a very generous program, but was a necessary component to really make it possible for them to spend a year abroad. Lots of time for research, networking, conferences, building confidence, coming back home, have their credibility raised to quite a different level. Easy to get research funding. It's incredible how a recognition like that, being recognized by a program like that increased their credibility enormously. So talk about gender bias. Suddenly men realize, because the funding agencies are very male-dominated, not always by numbers, but by culture. So this being recognized in the program raised the credibility. That changed their situation enormously. We have had, I think, 150 or 200 women through this program, which is quite a lot for Sweden, which is a small country. And they have reached their goals in so much faster than they would have had they not been in the program. And many more have become professors than there would have been unless they had been there. So I think, like Felicia said before, there are lots of you can create lots of programs that can give young women the confidence, the credibility and recognition that will sustain them in their academic careers. But it takes a lot of effort, it takes funding, and it takes a leadership that are willing to identify the problem. And so far, so good. I hope, as I said, these are sustainable developments.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Martine, so floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will be brief and tell you just a few anecdotes about my personal curriculum vitae, shall we say it like that. So as a young woman, also as a child, I was fascinated by biodiversity. My specialty is insects and plants. There's lots of them outside, and they're all very different. And that's something that's remained constant in my life. I still like diversity, biodiversity, and any form of diversity, also in cooking and spice and readings and all these things. That's one thing. And then I was also called a bookworm. I wanted to understand how things worked. I was at long family meals. I was hiding under a table somewhere reading a book. That's what people tell me about me. I don't exactly remember it, but... So I became a student at university, learned everything about insects and plants, also a little bit of engineering on the way. Moved to Cornell, that was in Belgium, moved to Cornell in the United States, and then to Berkeley, and finally to Switzerland. Those of you who know Switzerland within Europe, it's not a country which is predominantly known for the big place of women in the society there. So I didn't know that when I moved to Switzerland. I was all excited about research and things like that. So I moved into Switzerland, went my way through research, got various fellowship, applied for a professorship position, as one should do, got the professorship. I was quite pleased with that. Moved into my new institution. That's the one I'm still at now. So this was about 20, 25 years ago. And went to the first faculty meeting. And there, I realized I was the only woman and the first woman professor in that faculty. It was a little of a shock. But I thought, okay, well, we'll manage this. It wasn't exactly a problem. I was just surprised by the situation, but it all worked fairly well. And what followed up after that in my career is that basically I always said, okay, you can't just say how it should be, you should just do it. So there was, for example, a big grant program for coordinated research between University Center of Excellence, which we could apply to, and you had to have people in big university, several universities in Switzerland in network, and it was all decided by the federal government, and everybody told me, no way, you're crazy, you're never going to get this. My university, University of Neuchâtel, is one of the smallest ones in Switzerland. I said, well, if you don't try, you don't get it. And I'm convinced we can do something well. So we got this prestigious network centered on the University of Neuchâtel. I led that for a while. I became dean too on the way. And for me, it was just an obvious thing to apply for the position of rector when it became free, because I believe you can't tell people how it should be done and how it should be if you don't try to do it yourself, and if you don't do your best to try to do it yourself. So I applied for the rectorship, and I became rector. And then that's where the thing kind of surprised me. just like the first faculty meeting, actually, the media got hold of me. Was called by the national television. I had to go live in the studio for the evening news. And I thought, this is a bit of a big thing. I mean, nothing. You don't get Rector in the TV news in Switzerland normally. I mean, it's not, you get big manager from banks and things like that in the TV news, but you don't get new Rector in the TV news. So I got there and the journalist told me, so how should we call you? I mean, this was in French. Rector is a masculine name. I mean, you want it feminized or not, with an E or not. And I said, well, you call me rectrice, which is the proper feminine of rector in French. And they said, okay, we call you. And they said, but why did you choose that rather than keep it, put simply the E or keep the masculine form? And I said, well, it's not very complicated. In birds, the feather that gives the direction to the wing is the rectrice. So that I thought this was appropriate. And I realized while I was explaining this, that the whole fuss was about the fact that I became the first rector in Switzerland. I had not realized that when I applied for the job. I had not realized that during the whole process of the interview, because I always said, well, you know, you can't always tell people how things should be. You have to try to do them like it happens. So that's how one becomes rector. And after that, I also became president of the Swiss Rectors Conference and various things. But I think it's really important to trust diversity. That's one thing. And then if you think something should be like that, well, you should just try to do it. And it doesn't always work, of course. I mean, I've told you a few success stories. There's been less successful part, of course, too. But you always have to be confident in the fact that you have tried your best to do it and to achieve what you have decided were your objectives. And that's, there are glass ceilings and things like that. But I think really you feel comfortable with yourself if you know you have tried your best to get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your personal sharing, sharing your personal experiences with us. So now floor is Maren Jochimsen, please. She is the youngest one, so we used our power to make her last speaker. It's not fair.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon. I thought I first give you some more insight on the institution I am speaking here for, that Professor Sağlamer noticed, and then on what I would like to share with the discussion. So Professor Sağlamer said, I'm from the European Platform of Women Scientists. The European Platform of Women Scientists is an umbrella association of networks of women scientists and networks of scientists and other people working for equal opportunities in science and research throughout Europe. It's a multiplying organization. Its primary goals are to promote networking among women scientists, especially from a European perspective in Eastern Europe and the industrial sector, to enhance the understanding of the gender issue in science and research, especially at the research policy level, and last but not least, to ensure that women scientists' needs and interests are taken into the account when setting the policy research agenda. I'm also managing director of the Essen College of Gender Research at the University of Duisburg-Essen in Germany. That is an interdisciplinary gender research institution combining, amongst others, also the engineering and the medical faculties. What I thought I can bring into the discussion this afternoon, and it's thinking about it again, it's also coming back to where our discussion started this morning, is among the keywords cultural change, and also taking up the issue of sustainability that were raised before. And if you remember, we were speaking, Katrin Mess was speaking about the 4 strategic approaches taken in the European Union to reach equal opportunities in science and research: fix the woman, fix the institutions, and fix the knowledge. So what we have been discussing in the previous comments was individual measures, individual pathways to reach leadership positions. There's also structural change issues that need to be addressed, like transparency issues, knowing when a position becomes vacant, and so on and so forth. And both these individual measures and structural change and research organizations, to our understanding in the platform, belong to the realm of gender equality. The third strategic approach taken, fix the knowledge, namely in European Union language, integrating the gender dimension in science and research, or as we heard from our US and Canadian colleagues, integrating sex and gender analysis into research content, we argue is to be addressed as a separate realm of action. Why is that so? First of all, it needs to be addressed as a second realm of actions, because, as most of you know, it doesn't come part and parcel with enhancing the number of women in science. And oftentimes we think we fix the number of women in science, we get women into leadership positions, and along with it, we get more knowledge, more gender knowledge about our research topics. Well, this is not necessarily the case. So gender research is independent of the sex or the gender of the researchers in undertaking, and it provides us with knowledge from which we can use and derive equality measures on the one hand. It also points us to what Kara Tannenbaum said, whom are we studying and what are we studying, and also what is the excellence and the quality of our research in the end. So this paying attention to sex difference and to gender effects needs to be addressed with a separate set of measures or special measures and targets set, and that's why important to look at it. And while we are taking this perspective, we are now also thinking more closely about the relationship between gender equality and the gender dimension. And the cross over here is, and I come to the keyword of sustainability and cultural change, because what we've heard throughout the day and now also from the personal statements, so is at least the tendency to a lack of sustainability. And we heard this morning that a lot of achievement have been made in gender equality measures, but we seem to have reached a threshold. And that all in all, the cultural change is still underway, to put it in an optimistic way, but a lot needs to be done there. And our hypothesis is that the gender dimension and having more thorough knowledge on the gender content of our research topics to understand better the differences and the commonalities between the sexes and the gender will provide this cultural background and make it more normal in a way to have women and men not only as researchers but also as research subjects on the table. So the gender dimension in that sense is a precondition for a lot of sustainability with respect to gender equality. It's also a precondition for scientific excellence, as was pointed out this morning, because what do we do with research results that are only applicable for at most half of the population they claim they are results for? So there's also a precondition for gendered innovations, because if our results aren't gendered and aren't applicable to most of societal members, how can our innovations be? And last but not least, and this is very important now in the European context, and General Director and Commissioner Möders was cited this morning, Open Science, Open University, Open to the World. The Horizon 2020 program that is currently running is putting an emphasis on open science issues and on the third mission of universities. And I think if we are thinking about this, then also the gender dimension is a very important keyhole in this communication between science and society, because obviously taxpayers and citizens are interested in scientific results that are applicable to all members of society. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Maren. So, I would like to say a few words from my side. And we have been talking about cultural change, structural change. I would like to add one more: individual change, because most of the time women academics do not want to run for the leadership positions. They create excuses, they say that I would like to focus on my subject area, or I have family responsibilities, I have this and I have that. Behind this, they are hiding their learned helplessness. They think that even if they run, they will not get it. So in order to deal with this problem, we have to empower and encourage women to run for the leadership positions. So individual change by empowerment and by encouragement is a really very important issue. So I would like to say a few words from my experiences. When I ran for the rectorship, I'm an architect in a technical university. And when I decided to run for the rectorship, there was 10 more male candidates. And everybody told me that you have no chance. You are a woman, you are an architect in an engineering, between engineering schools, all the, rest of the candidates were engineers. And I said, okay, but I would like to make big changes in my university. This university needs extensive reforms. So I got the most votes and I'm elected. I was elected. So that's it. And then when we started to realize the reforms, women academics were the most important, help to realize the reforms. And we did really great reforms in Istanbul Technical University. And during those years, we did a lot for women academics. But at that time, I didn't have any gender perspective. I did the things by heart, just making improvement in their lives and so on. So at the end of the, my period, when we look at the gender disaggregated data, the percentage of the professors went up from 16% to 29%. And assistant professors went up from 28% to 46%. And the research assistants went up from 20% to 37%. So altogether, in total, it went up, the female academics went up to 28% to 37%. What happened after 2004, 2005? After 10 years, between 2005 and 2015, the women professors went up from 29% to 37%. So the tendency continued. So we have created a kind of momentum, although the pace was slower, but the tendency continued, and at the moment, in a technical university, 37% of the professors are female. So it's a, I think, important thing that we achieved in our university. So what I'm trying to tell you, this shows that women leaders are very important in universities to achieve gender equality in their institution. Because they are setting role models in their universities. Setting a role model is very important. And we also, I also recruited a lot of women advisors and project coordinators for the reforms. So the women gained visibility in the university, and they have been very successful in their endeavors. So the credibility of women academics increased a lot. And in terms of improvements in work-life balances, we constructed and opened nursery, primary school, high schools, and we provided flexible working hours, and we created funding for mobility. We also included women in the promotion and recruitment committees, and many things have been done. And we also paid attention to the transparency in recruitment and promotion processes, and we encouraged women academics for promotions. So these are very important, actions to realize this, to be able to get such a high representation of women academics in a technical university. I would like to share one more thing, one more memory with you. When in my second term, I appointed 2 female vice rectors among 3. So there was a big reaction coming from the university. They were telling me that you are a woman, and 2 of the vice rectors are women. So how is it possible? So top management has 3 women, 1 man. I said, well, in the last 225 years of our university, all the, administrators had been men. Nobody complained about that. So why are you complaining? You should not looking at their sexes, but their performances. So that was the end of the, discussion. So they really did great job. So I'm proud of having female vice rectors in power at the top level. So all of you should be running for, top positions. And that is our duty, Evora's duty, to encourage and to empower young academics to run for the leadership positions. Thank you very much. Now we can have few questions maybe, although I don't want to keep you away from the cocktail, but you are very tired. If you have any questions, then we can have 1 or 2. I think everybody's tired. You can ask us. Okay, please.
Thanks for these presentations. I'm Neus Prats from the RRB Barcelona. I have a question. To arrive to these positions, do you, all of you, think that you have to demonstrate more than the men, and all the path is more tiring, or how to overcome this? Or for the youngest one nowadays, just an advice?
Okay, would you like to? Okay.
I wouldn't say demonstrate, but I have to say be sure to know who you are and what you want. You can't show any doubts about what you want. Maybe it's a way to demonstrate, maybe, but I would phrase it like that.
I'd like to add demonstrate it as well. When I started as a rector, I just furnitured the whole antique room in the castle with a pink glass desk, a giant desk in pink, several queer colors, so that everybody was astonished and asked what's going on. And I said, no, I didn't pay money from the taxpayer. I bought them by myself. Just I wanted to have it nice. When I left after 10 years, all the newspapers of the region came and filmed the transport of my pink desk to my private house. You need demonstration.
Yeah, that's after being appointed. I think one also have to consider, do you have to demonstrate more strength or qualities, whatever, to achieve the leadership position? I think at least my generation have had to demonstrate greater merits or strengths and so on and so forth to be identified. You have to really go step forward as a person and demonstrate it, that you are strong, because no one is going to pick, at least I'm talking about my generation now, no one picked you up but you had to do it yourself in a way. And I think that challenge has not disappeared completely.
But every man had a mother, and the older you become, the more easy is it to pretend to be one of them.
Okay, so who is next, please?
My experience is only in United States, and the system is very different. So the president of the university really elects or chooses the provost he wants, or the advisory board or the board of the university chooses the president, and they are all usually male. And I've been a professor at FIU for 30 years. Before that, I was other universities. What I observe is, if you demonstrate too much strength, if you are really a feminist, they don't want you around themselves. The women I see they choose are usually more submissive, the ones whom would listen to them. A president will never choose a provost, female provost, who is strong feminist and who will not listen to him. This is what I know, what I see. I would like to hear your opinion on this if you have United States experience. Thank you.
May I just share our experience? Until January 2017, and in the universities, we were experiencing elections. And we were electing 6 candidates to be sent to the Council of Higher Education, and the Council of Higher Education were sending short list of 3 to the president of the country. But in good old times, nobody was touching the list. They were respecting the votes. So the first person who got the majority of the votes had been appointed all the time. But unfortunately, in January, they changed the law, and now the president directly appoints the rector. So probably we are going to face with the same problem in the coming years.
Yeah, I think the European countries, of course, have similar aspects, but really the systems are different. But the male-dominated societies, which is the norm, I think is very likely to behave the way you describe. So it's a long process, and it takes quite a lot of women being successful in the leading positions to make the male society start to reconsider. But I think some of our European systems are slightly more supporting to women. There are more openings in the processes, which is quite important. Do you think?
Yeah, I also wanted to say it's also the situation that everyone always looks to the woman to fix then everything. So it's the female vice rectors who are supposed to go through with the whole gender equality and gender dimension issue. Why do we think this? Because we think still gender equality and gender dimension primarily benefits women, but that doesn't need to be the case. So in this mixed vice rector group, a man can also stand up for the gender dimension or gender equality. And I think this is what we also have to aim for. So changing the institutional setup, making it more normal, or having rules and regulations like, for example, my university, they also have at least the European rule of 40% of the minority gender has to be represented, whatever gender that is. And they're also trying to balance the rectorate. And I think once you're used to it, you really have to find good arguments to fall back. As Ursula Nelles said about Münster, he didn't dare to just present an all-male rectorate. Now, this is about sustainability, and this is about also, of course, obviously who will notice and who will complain. But at least it's harder. But as long as we wait for or risk putting the responsibility for the question to individuals only, there will always be a risk with men and with women. Because also some enlightened male university leaders, if they change, the tide may change too. So we need to work for institutionalized backup systems that we are not risking so much how individuals decide.
I think we have come to the end of the session. I would like to thank all of you being here until 6:30. So now it's time for cocktail. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all of our speakers and